get into it, everyone. Welcome to the session. We're doing a panel today, so we've got a couple of slides for you, but promise it is not death by PowerPoint. So here we go. Let me just share this. So today we're going to talk about a game of inches. This is strategies to increase conversions of clicks to engaged applications. So all about the top of the funnel. How do we get those clicks, whether we're paying for them or whether they're arriving organically, or whether we're driving through ourselves to engage and convert into applications. With me on the panel today, I have two good friends of mine, stalwarts of the industry. The first one is Kelly Robinson from Red Dot. Kelly, do you want to introduce yourself?
Yeah, sure. Delighted. So Kelly Robinson, well-trained husband, father to two boys. For those that know me, huge Tottenham fan, martial artist. As you can hear from the accent, originally from London, via Newport Beach to Texas. And it's like a whole other country. I've been in the recruiting HR tech space for 23 years with Mex, Broadbean Career Builder. And I'm the founder of Red Dot, which is a recruitment marketing business. And the reason I wanted to join this panel is my single goal or single point I want to get through here is if somebody can make a change that's going to aid them making a placement. We're one of the few industries where we make small changes to what we do every week, and that can actually immediately be reflected in our earnings. So, my goal here is to hope somebody makes one additional placement.
Awesome. I love it. All about the end result. And then in addition, we also have Mr. Chris Hurley from Helicon Digital. Chris, give yourself an introduction.
Okay, some shameless self-promotion here. I'm the only one here without the cool accent. For that, I apologize. But Chris Hurley, Helicon Digital. I am the principal consultant. I have been working in marketing for more than 25 years now. I have spent the last 5+ years working in staffing. The reason why I'm here is that I'm interested in showing folks all of the great new tricks that I've been learning in staffing and the great ways to help everybody convert those applications to working folks. So thank you for inviting me. I appreciate being here. Jack, if you would, sir.
Awesome. Absolutely. And I don't know why I left myself to last, but that's the order we were in. So my name's Jack Copeland, CEO and co-founder of Staffing Future. Been in the industry coming up on 20 years. I'm not a Tottenham fan, I'm a Fulham fan, and I do also have a silly accent, and I'm at the beginning of becoming a well-trained husband. Very, very excited about the panel today. Just had a real passion for a while about top of the funnel marketing as it relates to our industry, taking some of the principles that you see in other industries and trying to build that level of sort of candidate experience and candidate engagement, for recruitment and more specifically for staffing companies. So in terms of, what are we covering today? We're going to stop sharing in a second and just get directly into a panel with some quick kickoff questions. But we've broken it down into sections. So we're going to start talking about traffic, get into kind of the different traffic sources and all that kind of stuff. Then we're going to talk about engaging that traffic and ultimately converting it. We're then going to leave you with a couple of key tips and a summary. So should all move along sort of fairly nicely. So let me stop sharing here now so I can see my colleagues on the call. So where's a good place to start? So Chris, I'm going to pick on you. What do we mean when we talk about different types of traffic sources and mediums, right? Starting from the very beginning.
It's a great question, and it really is a good place to start. So from the most part, you've got your Indeeds of the world, your ZipRecruiters, that sort of thing. These are the sources that you're out finding candidates, and you're going to hopefully bring those directly into your ATS, right? So being able to diversify your traffic sources is something that I'm constantly talking about, right? So if you're working with the Indeeds of the world, no doubt that is a great source. But if something ever changes with Indeed, that's going to be a big impact on your program, right? On bringing in new leads for you. So diversify them, reach out, try to figure out where you can get a host of different sources and kind of bring them into the fold for what makes sense. And then of course, you want to analyze each of those independent sources on their own, right? So make sure that you're infusing the budget accordingly, dependent upon what your analytics are telling you. And analytics are something I'm going to actually touch on probably later on in this conversation, but from my perspective, that is a big piece of it. And then just keep your eye on the ROI, right? So being able to look at those individual sources and, making sure that individual divisions in your company are performing the same within those sources is another thing that I'm constantly talking to folks about and makes a huge difference.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think people get so caught on kind of the gravy train of one or two job boards that they forget about the risk factor. They also forget about all the wider sort of mediums that you've got of everything from organic SEO to proactive outreach, email, text, all the different stuff that you can do to diversify and drive those sources, and the different levels of engagement and indeed conversion that you get from them, which we'll talk more about in a second. So Kelly, you're strong on the programmatic and media buy side. Any words of wisdom on maximizing your return on investment from your different traffic sources?
I mean, lots, but I want to just address one point, because I'm going to take a slightly different point of view. So I think diversification is important, subject to the market you're in, but I also think there's a danger. We sometimes, and I've been guilty. I mean, we built an entire company that distributed jobs, but I think sometimes people can over diversify and under budget. And there's a danger there, because if you're buying on a click basis and you're buying $100 worth of advertising, you go and put it out to 6 different sources, you're really you're buying a smaller number of clicks per source, and some of them may not convert into candidates. So I do think you need to balance diversification with putting the right amount of money against that individual job to get a result. I think it was different when we used to pay for posts. I think it was very different when we bought postings. I think now the vast majority of recruiters are paying on a click basis. You got to think about that carefully.
Agreed. And well put. I appreciate that perspective for sure.
Yeah, and is it all just about application volume, or is it more about kind of conversion and quality and what's your perspective there?
It is. From my perspective, you just get better converting leads from specific sources, and testing those out, from my perspective, has been a very valuable thing. So being able to associate each of those sources that you're dealing with within your ATS and have that reporting that's going to make it easy for you to really kind of dial in where you need to be. And to Kel's point, absolutely making sure that you've got enough budget by source to be able to make a difference, because that was actually an excellent point.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, I think, look, you've got to drive the ROI, but if you do look at that funnel and you think, okay, 85% of our placements are coming from one source, you need to start questioning yourself, is there a better way? Is there a less risky way? Are there chunks of candidates that I'm not opening myself up to that could, maybe I get less application volume from those sources, but if I give them a chance and I let it play out, I actually make more placements? Are they bigger value placements to your point, Chris? Are there different departments within the business where I'm going to get an ROI on that sort of different piece as well? Am I also just looking entirely at cost, right? Am I making my recruiters lazy? And I hate the term lazy recruiters, because of course, like that's almost like an old school approach of, therefore we want the recruiters to work hard to make money. No, let's make them as efficient as possible. Let's have them make as much money as possible and keep scaling it. But by the same token, right, are we just kind of going, okay, we're going to spend a load of money, we're going to get a load of applications, we're going to ignore a load of people, we're going to throw some of the best ones across and just try and make an easy placement? Or are we going to, work a little bit harder in terms of our effectiveness to try and place some of those higher value, harder to fill roles and try and sort of really get the best return investment out of all of our different sales efforts and really sort of get a good bang for our buck, with the kind of candidates that we've got. So that's, go ahead, Kev, sorry.
So I was just going to say just a couple of points on that, actually. So first and foremost, on your point on lazy recruiters, I don't think anyone cares about lazy recruiters as long as they make their target, right? Exactly. And if you can make your target and you're really good at it and you don't have to make 1,000 phone calls in order to do it, I think most companies are relatively happy with that. And the second thing is, and we have to also remember, anyone on the supply side, on the marketing side, on the job side, we're talking about impressions, clicks, conversions. At the end of the day, if you're a recruiter sitting in the hot seat at the coalface, you just need a candidate to fill your job, right? So again, let's sometimes take away some of these things, say, am I getting people? Am I putting enough budget on this job to generate some people to make a placement? And there's nothing worse. And I've seen it recently, people invest $50 on a job and that job's been programmatically sent out to 5 or 6 different channels, and we get 7 clicks from one and 12 from the other. But those 12 views, none of them converted on the website. They came to the career site, and I think we'll get into it. We'll talk more about highly converting landing pages and career sites, but 7 of those clicks landed on the career site and nobody applied for the job. So then you look at it and go, well, I spent the money and I haven't got a single candidate. So there's some definitely balances. And I think we're also guilty of sometimes thinking about all those different layers, impressions, clicks, et cetera, when we should just be focusing on, did I get somebody and can I turn that person into a placement?
It's almost like you want to work your funnel backwards, right? Because ultimately what matters is the money, right? You start with that. Did it come all the way through and did we make a placement? And then we can start to chop it up to go, how do we optimize it back up to diversify a little bit, to optimize each of these areas, right? But there's no point in optimizing stuff that doesn't make you money, right? There's no point in diversifying stuff that doesn't make you money. So I don't know, maybe it's a funnel backwards approach, because ultimately there's an end goal. And then you work back to optimize and the efficacy above and beyond that. All right. Okay. So sort of next piece then, I want to talk a little bit around on the engagement side. So Kelly, obviously me and you go pretty far back. I know you work a lot with corporate brands as well as staffing, right? So I'm a staffing company. I'm competing with corporate brands. How do I build the right kind of engagement when I'm competing with those job ads from Coca-Cola and IBM and people like that?
Well, first of all, you probably don't want to, because what they do is they take a job description from their ATS and they post it, and they're very rarely engaging, but they're normally covering lots of legal reasons or lots of legal parts.
And to be clear, sorry to interrupt, that's their ATS, not the staffing ATS.
That's right? Their ATS, yeah. So the corporates, if you see their job, it's going to be ATS. But I think where we've got lazy and this is a bad lazy, not a good lazy, right? Where we've got lazy is that we have a tendency to take their job description and go, great, I've got a job, let's start working it. And you can test it now. Take any one of your job descriptions, put it into Google or Bing or whatever your favorite search engine is, press a button and you'll find 50 versions of it across loads of different channels. So, I think most people in recruitment are wearing, many hats, in the sense of, as a recruiter or somebody in this business, you're wearing a sales hat. You're an amateur psychologist because you're talking to a person about changing a job, which is about as stressful as, I think, was it number 3? It's like getting married, moving house and changing job on that level, right? So you play amateur psychologist, you play mum and dad, you play protector, you play style guide. This is what you should wear to your interview. And I think one of the things that you need to do is you need to become a proficient copywriter, okay? Because postings are adverts, they're not job descriptions. And we have got lazy. We take a job description, we post it out. My thing on this is, does this advert that I'm writing, does it actually encourage somebody to quit their job and go and work for your client? And if not, what can you do to bring that out? So, nowadays we all use AI, right? And AI is there. So you don't have to be a full-on copywriter. You can start with AI to say, hey, help me with an advert for X as your kind of start point template. But it does need to answer those questions. It needs to give somebody an idea of, who is this company? What does this company do? What is the position? What would I actually do in this organization? And then what's the potential? Why should I, as a candidate, want to go and work for this organization? What's in it for me? And I think we fail to miss a lot of that. We've become bullet point frenzy, right? Everything's in a bullet point. We've stopped using, well, maybe not everybody, and I'm generalizing, right? So there are people, the exceptions to the rule, but we're not using attention grabbing headlines. We're taking the job description. We're not emphasizing the benefits and the reasons to work for the company, or even often bringing the company culture to life. Definitely missing visuals, and I'll skip over that because we'll talk more about that on landing pages. We should be highlighting growth opportunities, the reasons why you should work there. And we really want to be encouraging people that once they've taken this ad and they've written it and they post it, share it on the socials, get it out there, use your network, use the things that, share it on LinkedIn, etc. And there's millions of tools that you can use to automate that. And the other thing is, and again, this depends on the type of recruitment you're in, but for me, if this is a office-based position, put the location in there, tell people where they're going to work so they can make a decision. Is it and I've used this phrase before, but is it an inch on the map? But that's a 3-hour inch, because that's the bit that if you drive that inch, it takes you forever. And the other thing I think,
like it.
the 3 hour inch, yeah, absolutely. Now, I think the other thing that we're also guilty of is ambiguity, right? We need to start removing that from the job descriptions. So examples are, if you ever met an applicant that considers themselves not motivated, not committed to succeed, not willing to go the extra mile, is not personable, doesn't have good communication skills, doesn't have excellent written communication, doesn't have good verbal communication. So they're almost pointless phrases to be put into job description, into job adverts.
Yeah.
So let's pull them out and let's get to the nuance of who is this company, what is the position, and what's the potential. And if you start that, if you want to start standing out from the employers that you're recruiting for, because they're all trying to recruit these positions directly because it's cheaper. They don't want to pay 25% if they don't have to. You've got to start differentiating between a job description and a job advert, and you've got to do it better than they do.
Yeah. No, I think that's perfect. And Chris, I want to get to you in a second as well, because I know we want to talk a bit about landing pages and other things. But for all of this, I would position your mindset to think like a consumer, right? So I just want to get this out, talk about it a lot. Everyone who's applying for a job is also ordering an Uber, is also ordering DoorDash, is also buying a flight, is also buying a home, and is also getting marketed to with other job positions. And if you look at yourself when you do that, you might not be looking for a job right now. You might be running your own staffing company. But do you go to DoorDash and go, oh, there's a new restaurant? It's got no pictures of any of the food and no reviews and no information on what's actually the ingredients. I'm just going to buy a Caesar salad from here. No, you don't, right? Because it's lacking information to get that engagement from you, to keep you around, to have you go through that thought process. And it's no different with a job ad. And I do think as an industry, not just staffing, recruiting as well, we're behind in many ways, right? The realty industry or the consumer facing marketing industry. And so I think it's really important to sort of think like that as you go through the process of writing it. Like if I was a highly sought after candidate, why would I bother applying to this job? So Chris, moving on then from sort of job ads, is it all about job ads, or are there industries where landing pages are important, and what a landing page is all about? I mean, what is the difference between a job ad and a landing page even?
So, right, the job ad is essentially what is the catalyst, and then the landing page is what gets them to convert. And I think it's important really when we're talking about game of inches that we really speak to test and measurement, right? Because that's what we're really talking about, is how much can we move the needle by making small changes, right? Wide changes or multiple changes at once, and you've got no idea where you're actually making impact, right? So these things are ultimately important, and those are all things that can be tested with landing pages. And I would suggest looking at doing that through dynamic technology that would allow you to fill with different types of job descriptions on the fly, and then gives you a readout of exactly which one the winner would be, right? ABC test, that sort of thing. Also, understand the SEO behind what it is that needs to be happening with your job posts, with your job descriptions, right? Really getting in the heads of folks that are out there searching these jobs and understanding, what are the appropriate acronyms, what are the certifications associated with what it is that you're trying to bring in, making sure that you're in front of those people that are putting in the appropriate information so that you're the first one that pops is always super important. And also, this is something I'd like to hear Kelly's feedback on, is that when you're using programmatic, and I suggest that you at least test it, putting in a feedback loop for programmatic so that they can tell exactly where your qualified candidates off of that programmatic are coming in from, and then bolster that channel for better performing applications in the future. I really like that process as well. But yeah, testing everything from the length of your job descriptions to the length of your forms is another piece, right? So really sort of getting in tune with where is it that you have a breaking point when somebody is no longer willing to fill out your form. Pagination of forms is something that you can do there so that there's a sort of a first group of it, and then you move on to the second. And I know you've done a lot of work there, Jack, so I'd love to hear your opinion.
Yeah, absolutely right. There's just so many different areas that you can optimize within that process, right? So there's lots of different A/B testing around layouts and things like that. Are images important with landing page, Kelly? I know they do a lot on the corporate side with images and video ads and things like that.
Yeah, I think so. I think you're bringing the company culture, you're bringing the environment. You're just making it a more interesting kind of reception point for somebody looking for a job. So yeah, and you can't do it on a normal job ad, right? Some you can, but and often staffing companies are more restricted on what they can do with the job ad for some of the publishers than direct employers. But when you bring that person to your landing page, it's your sales funnel. It's your opportunity for somebody to connect, but it's also your opportunity for somebody to disqualify themselves, because that's we're always assuming that we want to capture as many people as possible. There are a lot of industries where they get thousands of applications, and actually a lot of them are unqualified. So we really want that as a sales funnel to discount them if they're not relevant.
Yeah, why waste everyone's time, right? And yeah, to your point, right? Like, I know, Chris, we've done a lot of work in the travel nursing space. That's how we originally met. But that's sort of a good example where you've got, even though it's a highly qualified individual, right? You need like 1,000 RN ICUs throughout the countries that are going to get on planes. So the location of the job is important, but the location of where they are right now isn't important. And, as long as they're qualified in that state and they're a registered nurse, and they want to work in the ICU, we want to talk to them. So, that's where you can really build the visuals and the imagery, and you can go and really optimize the conversion of something that basically isn't even a job description, right? It's a generic job description of come work with my organization and I'm going to get you to this end location, versus maybe the end job description that people are actually just posting out from the ATS via MSPs or whatever. So I think it depends a lot on the different types of jobs you've got. And we see with some of our clients that, that they're quite diverse, and they don't necessarily take a slightly different approach for some of the stuff that they're doing that's a little more transactional and junior, to some of the stuff that's highly skilled, to some of the stuff that's maybe really sought after candidates that are 3-4 year direct placement roles. I think you've got to have a different approach depending on kind of your industry to how you're going to get that engagement from the different types of candidate. Because, if I am driving Uber, right, to talk about something that's a little easier to convert, it's pretty simple, right? I just want to know the basics of kind of the role. I don't need to be kind of sold the dream necessarily. So let's move on a little bit around to talk about kind of conversion. So I want to kick off this one. So what do we mean by conversion? Well, look, there's a couple of different elements to it. The bit that we're talking about today at the top of the funnel is basically just converting someone into a lead, or arguably could take it a little bit further, because we've been talking about quality, into a qualified engaged lead, someone that's actually going to talk to us that we've got, a chance of placing. And so obviously controlling the traffic sources at the top to make sure you've got the right people visiting, controlling the engagement to make sure that they're likely to action is important. But the type of conversion we're talking about is, how do we then actually get them to apply? And how do we then get them through to where they need to be? So when you're thinking about converting, once again, let's go back to the DoorDash analogy, right? So yeah, okay, I'm a user on DoorDash, or I'm new to DoorDash. I want to go through and I want to order this delicious looking Caesar salad from this new place around the corner. If it gives me the old school 2005 way of signing up, where I have to go through all these processes of entering every single line of my information, and I have to plug in a credit card, I have to authorize it, go back to my email, and it's not seamless, it makes it very, very hard for me to do what you want me to do, right? So applications have to stay nice and small. There's a lot of different things you can do to that. If you need more information, you can chunk them out into multiple blocks. You can use conditional logic to break it up. So you can sort of say, for example, do you have a resume? Yes. Okay. Well, I'm not going to ask you these questions because they're in your resume. No, like everyone's pet hate is, oh, well, let me upload my resume and then answer all the information that's in my resume. I'll rewrite my resume, right? That's the war in the corporate world. But by the same token, let's try and convert as much information as we can. But let's start with the basics, right? Especially if it's a highly sought after candidate. I want your phone number. I want your most recent job. I want your resume if I've got it. I want to know what job you're applying to. That's my 4 or 5 bits of information that I need. Let's get that submitted, and then let's ask for the rest of it, right? Let's go through the registration as a second phase. Because if we just start asking people who maybe don't have a great engagement to just come through and give us their social security number and talk about what they had for dinner and all the rest of it, you're asking an awful lot from the generation that's used to checking out with Apple Pay, right? So these tools are important, Google Drive, Dropbox, Quick Applies. There's a lot of different tech that's out there, even just on the apply form that can help you. Not to mention, my world, logged in, logged out process, right? Like, I've already applied to a job. I'm a travel nurse applying to 5 different jobs in 5 different locations. You can ask me the same 10 questions again in the same user experience. I mean, I don't want to do it. If I come back 3 months from now, I want to do it again. Like, I don't have to go back to DoorDash or go back to Uber and re-enter my address and my payment information every single time. So I think people have that in the onboarding world, and I understand that, but a lot of people don't have it at the top funnel. They either push people through the onboarding logged in experience that's, you know, a 5-minute process, or they go through and they say, okay, we're just going to treat you like we don't know who you are and make you do the same thing sort of again and again and again. Any thoughts on that, guys, before we move on maybe into some of the later stages of conversion?
No, I think you're spot on with everything that you just said. I think all of that makes perfect sense. I think as leadership, we tend to start throwing assets at things and hoping for the best. But I really want to kind of double down on the fact that when it's a game of inches, you follow the data, right? So with everything that you just talked about, all the variations that took place, it's like we should be testing and measuring each of those variations in place and understanding what kind of return on investment. To your point, did we put those people to work? It's great if we were able to get a great engagement score. It's great if we're able to get lots of clicks, even if we're getting lots of applications. Fantastic, all those things. But the bottom line is the only thing that really matters.
Yeah, absolutely. And to your point there, Chris, which I should hit, in a game of inches, right? Conversion, we've seen it in our industry, and you know, hopefully most people know what we do. We do the job board piece. So very, very detailed on that application conversion. We've seen applications convert at less than 2%, and we've seen them convert north of 80%, right? So that's a huge range, irrelevant of your traffic source, and irrelevant even of your engagement of the volume of candidates that you're going to get. And so, you know, there's debates around the harder it is, the more committed the candidate is, or how much they should want the job. But it can make a huge difference if you're buying those clicks. Arguably, conversion is, you know, even though it's the last piece, is the most important piece, because otherwise you're just burning money, right? Non-stop.
Exactly.
Anything to add on that, Kel, before we move on?
Yeah, so I was just thinking actually on the, so we started off saying that recruiters need to be salespeople, amateur psychologists, style guides. I added copywriters. Now you're adding landing page designers on that as well. So their jobs, so they're never going to be lazy. They're just going to wear lots of different hats, right?
Marketeers, business analysts, technologists.
I will pause because I was looking at the questions. There was a question from Richard. He said, what landing page do you recommend? So I don't know, do you have a recommended platform or structure to do it? What's your thought process on that? Because you know, some companies have resources to outsource it. Some people have to do it themselves. Have you got any advice for somebody that says, I'm actually going to try and build a landing page and put a mini application form on it? What would you do? Would you outsource it? Would you contract it? Would you buy a platform? What's what would be advice from that question?
Well, I think maybe me and Chris can take a crack at this. So I think for me, obviously, it just depends on your world, right? So, you know, if you're looking for forklift truck drivers, you know, you might not even want to necessarily go for a landing page, right? You can get such good conversion off of something like Indeed from the cost. Like, what is the purpose of the landing page? Generally, it's something that's going to be, and I'm talking landing page, not as in the piece that converts out of a job description, but something that is separate to a job description. You know, what is the purpose of it? Well, generally, the purpose of it is my job ads aren't working, right? I need to go out to passive talent. So I need to start marketing on Google Ads. I need to start marketing on Instagram. And so at that point, yeah, I think you probably, if you're going to spend that kind of budget on driving that traffic through, you probably want to get someone to design and build something that's properly integrated, that has a nice workflow after it and is actually going to convert. But it also depends, to your point, Kel, how much money you're spending, right? If you're spending $200, then maybe it's not worth it. But if you're going to go and spend 10 grand on marketing to that landing page over the next 3 months, then, you know, absolutely you need to get it done properly and you need to kind of focus on it. And you need to run that analysis and you need to run that feedback loop as well, even right the way through to the recruitment team, because the easiest way to get conversion would be just ask everyone to click a button without entering any information. But, you know, a load of leads with no name and no phone number isn't going to make you any money. So where's the inflection point between I've got a huge amount of conversion, but actually I don't have easy ways to get hold of these people, or I don't even know whether I want to reach out to them because I've got no idea what their skills are. Anything to add to that, Chris?
I think you're spot on. You kind of stole my thunder in the fact that you were saying, you know, test these things and make sure that what you've got is the correct landing page, because there is really no real answer to that question. Every database is different. They're all going to react differently, right? So pulling people in an acquisition play versus a retention play, whatever it is that you're doing with that landing page, test it. Test every variability you can with that page and get what is going to work best for you. Something that's working great for someone else isn't necessarily going to work for you. You got to test it.
And I think there's some, I mean, and I'll just finish up a point, right? So I think there's some value almost in from a client development, business development, brand standpoint as well, because if you look at top real estate agents, if they're selling a house, they build a mini website for the house, right, with 500 pictures, a video walkthrough. Nowadays, they've always got drones. I'm not sure we can use drones on jobs, but maybe think of a way. Maybe we'll think of a way. But the point is if we started to if we was to start to showcase our clients and that particular role and put some energy and efficiency into trying to find the right person and branding it, does that differentiate you from your customer, from your competitors? Does that actually separate you? So when you go to a client and say, why should we work for you? Why should we pay you 25%? It's not, oh, we've got the biggest database. So it's like, hey, this is what we do. Mm-hmm. And it's part of the sales pitch. So I don't know. I think there's more in it than just somebody understanding the job and qualifying themselves or disqualifying themselves. And there was a really good point in the and I want to mention it because I thought it was interesting in the chat, and that, putting a QR code on there as well, so that people can just snap to it at any point in time. It's a really smart idea to add that. So whoever said that, great idea. Well, let's start including that one.
No, totally. And I want to move on to next section, but just to piggyback off of that as well, text message responses with chatbots as well, right? If you're trying to advertise to truckers, right, or some mechanics, markets that are really hard to fill and hard to find, it's not all about digital, right? Sometimes actually just having a text, text truck to 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 on the freeway can get you into that piece. So, Matt's chimed in from Staffing Engine, and actually this was the next area that I was going to get to talk to you, Chris, before we kind of wrap. So the later funnel of conversion, right? Because people fall into the trap of, I've got this many applications, woohoo, let's all go off to the pub and celebrate, right? What tech do you need later on in the process? I'm seeing more and more of our clients implement HubSpot as well as Sense, Bullhorn Automation, and other things like that. Chatbots with Staffing Engine. What other tech do you need in place, and what is the purpose of it to actually get through to that proper conversion, which I'm assuming in this scenario really is a qualified phone call?
Absolutely. So much. And I'll touch on just pieces of it here, right? So within your ATS, making sure that you have a follow-up process in place that everybody understands, and there are very simple and easy to understand qualification values and that sort of thing. Ultimately important. Another piece of that is that when folks are coming to your website, your landing page, whatever the case may be, you're getting an application directed through the ATS, a near real-time call is ultimately important. Waiting around and hoping that you'll be able to catch that person later that's a tough break, because what's happening, and this is from doing a great deal of analytics, is that folks are on your page, they will submit, and then you've got just a few minutes before they're on your competitor's page and they submit there. Your competitor makes a phone call faster than you are. They've won the hearts and minds of who it is that who's just applied with you, right? So getting ahead of that curve, making sure that you're making a call as soon as possible, in my opinion, ultimately important. Also, email, to your point, automation. Get an automation platform and integrate it with your ATS. You want email and going out in near real time. If you can send out text follow-ups, absolutely, you definitely want to do that. Get in front of folks, have all of those pieces of information out there going directly to your recruiter, so that it's an easy back and forth conversation. It never feels like somebody is sort of being left out of the loop. All of that ultimately important. And then just adopt that vetting process. Make sure that your all the leads that are coming in are being qualified in a way that you can pipe that information back to a programmatic partner or use in analytics to understand where your best bang for your buck is going to be.
Yeah, totally. And I think that all relates. If you're sat there going, hang on, I'm not in a market where I can just have everyone that applies immediately get a phone call, is relative, right? The CEO of Manpower wants to talk to Staffing Future. We're going to pick up the phone and dial right away, right? But I do understand that there are people out there that are spending fortunes trying to attract, travel nurses or data analysts or people who build AI, where they want to get them on the phone as quickly as possible. They're not dealing with thousands of applications a day. And there are other people that are going, I've got thousands of applications to these jobs. you still want speed to market. It's just that you're probably leveraging technology to pre-qualify. So you're just taking a longer step of that funnel to go, okay, am I going to use, basic decision tree qualification? Am I going to go and use something more sophisticated? I'm going to shout out Glide as well, because Rod's in the comments. Using AI to have sort of conversational qualification to sort of try and figure out who I should be talking to. Or am I in that world like, the travel nursing space, where, to be honest, the minute someone submits that application, I need to be picking up the phone to them, because that's kind of my job, and that's what I've got to do. All right, we're nearly going to move on to a couple of pieces, Cal, and I really want to show an interesting graph that Kelly leverages in Red Dot World, because I think it's effective. But before I do, anything to add to that, Kelly?
No, I mean, I think you've probably covered all the points that I wanted to mention as well. So no.
Awesome. Sounds good. Okay, perfect. Well, let's let people feast their eyes on this, and you can kind of walk them through it real quickly. We were passionate about not just doing a panel where actually we just go through a load of different screens for everyone, but we did want to give people some visuals. So, Kelly, I know this is the recruitment funnel that you talk about in terms of the different structures of traffic, and this is something that we were talking about fairly early at the beginning. But do you want to kind of walk us through your thought process around the way that you divide this up?
Yeah, and I mean, this is somewhat market dependent, but it kind of breaks down between how you think about finding a candidate, right? So it starts off with active people that are looking for jobs. And one of the things you'll notice that is each step of this pyramid, your cost of acquisition gets, I think, a lot more expensive. Maybe the first two base ones. So, I put Indeed in there. I think you've got to separate them out. There are 400 million users every single month. They're such a big part of the conversation in recruitment that they need a separate line. I've then brought in there kind of your second group, which is your ZipRecruiters and your programmatic job boards that we kind of sort of bring together. And each one of these steps for me is ways to find a candidate, but you want to be at the point where you've maximized what you can from one before you move to the next, maybe with the exception of the first two. So what I mean by that is that I wouldn't immediately go out and start running Google search ads or Google SEM stuff. If I'm looking for a candidate, I would start with the job boards, because they're going to do it much better, and the cost of acquisition is going to be probably a third of what it would be on Google. So as you tap out each of your steps in your given market, then you'd look to the next one, and eventually you get into the passive market where you're talking about branding and doing direct things, and that's obviously much more expensive than running an ad on ZipRecruiter or Indeed. So that's the way we look at running a recruitment marketing funnel for our clients and the things that we do, starting at a base level with the biggest job board in the world, and then moving up into other job boards and then into Google, and you can see the rest on the slide. Are you going to share this, Jack?
Yeah, absolutely. We can share all of this. If you want to reach out to any of those who want to reach out to Red Dot Media, Helicon Digital, Staffing Future, we can get this information, and this pack will be available. I think the World Staffing Summit allows you to download the recordings. But if anyone wants to reach out, Jack at Staffing Future, I can get this across to you, along with anyone else's contact information. Staffing Future, not Staffing Futures. Don't know why the entire industry puts an S on the end, but here we are.
I've known you for years, and I put an S on the end still, so I'm sorry about that. But again, this is just that pyramid's the way we think about attracting candidates. Obviously, there's elements of that. Some of this is I using a quick apply, using AI, using landing pages, and it's going to differentiate. It depends on your market. But for me, that's the way you start to walk through and find your people.
Yeah, and I would assume you're probably, most people aren't going to use the entire pyramid, right? I mean, there's a few giant companies that might, but most people, you're going to be sitting in a sort of section in the middle or at the top or down the bottom, depending on what you recruit and where you go. Awesome. Sounds good. Well, look, I think we have about 5 minutes left. So one of the things we also wanted to do is wanted to wrap up with some key takeaways. So we'll start with me just because I'm the first one up here. So think like an applicant, right? Go through your own apply and lead workflow, read your own job descriptions, think about would you apply, think about how hard it is to apply, maybe even go to your competitors' websites and look at what that journey looks like, right? It's very easy for us to get off the hook saying, it depends on your market. Well, you know your market, and your competitors know your market. So go and see how you line up against the competition. And is it easier or harder to do? Are you more or less likely to want to do it? That will kind of give you a good baseline. And over to you, Kelly.
So I'm going to change mine now. I'm going to say be lazy and hit your target. No, but become a copywriter, right? Take back that control. Write your own job adverts. And I think Richard's just talked about social media, and it's the same for social media. It's still a job advert, right? To me, there's only 4 ways you find a candidate, and that is you run some form of advert, you go and find them by search. If you're a corporate, you use an agency or you get a referral, right? They're the 4 ways you find, and nuances within that. But for me, stop just taking your client's job description and reposting it. Do something, put some time and energy into turning that into a job advert.
Perfect. And then over to you, Chris.
Sure. So mine are diversify your lead sources. And to Kelly's point, make sure that you have budget that makes sense for each of those lead sources before you start diversifying. I completely agree. And then track those lead sources individually and by category. And when I say this, different divisions within the company, even different categories, right? So in the nursing world, your RNs are going to come in different than your techs are. And you're definitely going to want to test each one of them. And with every step of the way that gets them into your ATS. And speaking of ATS, reporting. Make sure you have a robust set of reporting so that you can understand exactly what you're seeing in market as these metrics are coming in, and you can start to make budgeting decisions based on what it is that you're seeing. So many folks will just go out there and kind of hope for the best and then wait for their recruitment teams to kind of come back to them and tell them whether they did a good job. In my opinion, being on top of the fact that you're doing a good job the whole time is ultimately important.
Awesome. I love it. Perfect, guys. Well, I think we've got a summary here. We might be a summary on a summary, but think about your traffic sources, the cost and the relevance. Make sure that you're not just buying traffic, you are engaging that audience, right? You spend money on this traffic. You do not want to waste it by being lazy and not presenting your best self or your best version of that job and that best version of your client. And then conversion, right? Make it easy for the user to do what you want them to do. Right? Capture the right information, but don't ask them for the world. They're busy just like you are. And then when you get that information, leverage it, right? The battle is not won with the application. The battle is won the day after the placement when the person shows up for the job and absolutely kills it. So that's the summary. Everybody, thanks so much for the time today. Really, really appreciate it. Hopefully it's been a good session. And just real quick, if you do want to reach out to anyone on the panel, I've already given my email address, but Kelly, Chris, how do we find you guys?
Well, you could definitely find me on LinkedIn. If you want to email me directly, my email is hurley@helicondigital.com. And the spelling is up there for you, so it should be pretty straightforward.
Perfect. And you, Kelly, I know you said you're hiding from everyone.
Yeah, I'm like the A-team. If you can find me, you can hire me. Or Speakeasy, one of the two. You've got to find the code word. LinkedIn, email, Twitter, usual places, or not Twitter, X, where during the week I'll talk about recruitment, and of the weekend I'm arguing with other soccer fans.
Us Fulham fans don't go on X. It's too brutal. Well, on that bombshell, we'll wrap. Thanks everyone for putting the time in, and thanks to Jan and the team at Candidly for organising the World Staffing Summit. It's been fantastic, and really excited to be a part of it. And then finally, thank you to you, Kelly, and you, Chris, for the time and energy that's gone into this, and for being on the panel with me.
Thanks for having me.